Hello, little story explorers, and welcome to our magical storytime adventure. I'm so happy you're here today. Are you ready for an adventure? Great. Because today we're going to hear a tale about a very grand duke, his 10,000 men, and a rather large hill. It all starts with a famous rhyme. I wonder if you know it. It goes like this: the grand old Duke of York, he had 10,000 men. He marched them up to the top of the hill, and he marched them down again. But have you ever wondered why he marched them up and down? What was at the top of that hill? And what did his 10,000 men think about all that marching? Well, snuggle up, get comfy, and let's find out together in the full story of the grand old Duke of York. Once upon a time, in a land filled with rolling green hills and cheerful, bustling towns, lived the grand old Duke of York. Now, this Duke wasn't just grand by name. He was grand in every way. He had a grand castle with tall, pointy towers, a grand smile that reached from ear to ear, and a grand booming laugh that could be heard all across his dukedom. Most importantly, he was the leader of a grand army of 10,000 men. These weren't just any men. They were the bravest, strongest, and most loyal soldiers in the entire kingdom, and they all looked up to their duke with great admiration. They had shiny boots, bright red coats, and tall, fuzzy hats that made them look very important indeed. One bright and sunny morning, the duke woke up with a grand idea. It popped into his head like a bubble, shimmering with excitement. He looked out of his highest castle window at the biggest hill in all the land. It was known simply as the Great Hill. No one ever climbed it because it looked so high. The Duke thought, "My men are the finest in the world. They are strong and they are brave. But are they the fittest? A truly great army must be ready for anything. I know. We shall march to the very top of the Great Hill." He believed this grand march would be the perfect exercise to make his men even stronger and more disciplined than they already were. He called for his top general, a wise old soldier named General George. "General George!" The Duke boomed, his voice echoing through the castle halls. "Gather the men! All 10,000 of them. We have a grand adventure ahead of us today." General George, who always trusted the Duke's plans, saluted smartly. "At once, Your Grace." "Where shall we be marching?" The Duke pointed a grand finger towards the window. "There, George!" "To the very top of the Great Hill." General George's eyes widened just a little. The top of the Great Hill? No one had been up there in years. But an order was an order. Soon, the castle courtyard was filled with the sound of 10,000 pairs of boots marching in perfect time. The drummers drummed a lively beat trat-a-tat-tat. And the trumpeters blew a cheerful tune ta-da-da-da. The 10,000 men stood in perfect rows, their red coats like a field of poppies, all ready for the Duke's command. The grand old Duke of York, sitting proudly on his magnificent white horse named Marshmallow, rode to the front of his army. "Men," he called out, his voice full of energy, "today we face a challenge. Today we will show everyone how strong and determined we are. Today we march to the top of the Great Hill." A great cheer went up from the 10,000 men. They were excited. They loved their Duke, and they loved a good challenge. And so, the great march began. "Forward, march!" shouted the Duke. With the drummers drumming and the trumpeters trumpeting, the long line of soldiers started their journey towards the giant hill. The villagers came out of their houses to wave and cheer. "Hooray for the Duke! Hooray for our brave soldiers!" they shouted. The soldiers smiled and waved back, feeling very proud. At first, the march was easy. The path was wide, and the sun was warm. The men sang marching songs and told jokes. A young soldier named Tom turned to his friend Sam and said, "This isn't so bad. It's like a lovely walk in the countryside." Sam grinned back. "Just wait, Tom. We haven't even reached the bottom of the hill yet." And Sam was right. As they got closer, the great hill seemed to grow even bigger, looming over them like a sleeping giant. The path started to get steeper and steeper. The cheerful singing turned into quiet puffing and panting. The soldiers had to lift their knees high with every step. The Duke, on his horse Marshmallow, called out words of encouragement. "Keep it up, men! Think of the view from the top. Think of how strong your legs are getting." The army was now halfway up the hill. They were still marching, but much, much slower. The drummer's beat was a little less lively, and the trumpeters needed to take deep breaths between their toots. The sun felt hotter now, and the soldiers' shiny boots were covered in dust. "Oh my," panted young Tom. "My legs feel like jelly." Sam, panting beside him, replied, "Mine too. But look. Look at the Duke. He hasn't stopped smiling." It was true. The Duke was still there, urging them on, his grand smile as bright as ever. When they were up, they were up. He would say to himself, feeling very proud of his men's effort. He knew it was hard, but he also knew they could do it. They were halfway to their goal, and from this high up, they could see their whole town laid out below them like a tiny toy village. It was an amazing sight. Finally, after what felt like a very long time, the first soldier reached the top. It was General George. He stood, catching his breath, and looked around. Then another soldier reached the top, and another, until all 10,000 men and the grand old Duke of York stood together on the very top of the great hill. They had made it. A huge cheer erupted from the tired but triumphant soldiers. They hugged each other and patted each other on the back. They had done it. The view was incredible. They could see for miles and miles in every direction. They saw forests and rivers, farms and fields, all sparkling under the afternoon sun. Wow! Breathed Tom. "I've never seen anything so beautiful." The Duke beamed with pride. "You see, men," he announced. "I knew you could do it. Now you are not only the bravest army, but also the fittest. From up here, we can see everything. We are truly on top of the world." They spent a little while at the top, enjoying the view and a well-deserved rest. They drank cool water from their canteens and ate the apples they had packed in their bags. The gentle breeze at the top felt wonderful, cooling their warm faces. The Duke walked among his men, thanking them for their hard work. "You have all made me very proud today," he said to them. "This was not an easy task, but you worked together and you never gave up." The soldiers felt their hearts swell with pride. All the huffing and puffing had been worth it. But soon, it was time to go. The sun was beginning to dip lower in the sky, painting the clouds in beautiful shades of orange and pink. "All right, men," the Duke called out. "It's time to go home. Dinner will be waiting." And so, the grand old Duke of York, he marched them down again. You might think that marching down a hill is easy, but a very steep hill can be just as tricky going down as it is going up. The soldiers had to be careful not to slip or tumble. They took small, careful steps, and held onto each other for balance. "Ho! Steady there!" Sam said as Tom wobbled a little. The Duke, still on his horse Marshmallow, led the way slowly and carefully. He called out, "Take your time, men! Safety first!" When they were down, and we want everyone to get down in one piece. The soldiers found that if they zigzagged down the hill, it was a little easier. They laughed as some of them slid a few feet on slippery patches of grass. The journey down was much quicker and filled with more laughter than the journey up. As they reached the bottom of the hill, the sky was turning a dusky purple. The villagers were there again, this time with lanterns, to welcome their heroes home. They did it! They climbed the great hill. Everyone cheered. The 10,000 men, though tired and dusty, marched proudly back into the town square, their heads held high. They had marched up a great hill and marched down again, and they felt stronger and more united than ever before. That night, the Duke held a grand feast in the castle to celebrate. There were long tables filled with delicious food, and music played all evening. The Duke stood up and raised his glass. "To my 10,000 men!" he boomed. "The finest army in the land, who are never up and never down, but are always ready for an adventure." Everyone cheered and celebrated their grand day. And from that day on, whenever the children of the dukedom saw a group of people working hard together to do something difficult, they would think of the Duke and his men. The story was told over and over again, and eventually it became the famous nursery rhyme that we all know and love. It reminds us that even when a task seems big and pointless, like marching up a hill just to march back down, there's always a reason. It's about teamwork, determination, and the fun of having an adventure together. And the grand old Duke of York? Well, he was always planning new adventures for his men, because he knew that the best leader is one who helps his team become the very best they can be, one step at a time. Thank you so much for joining me on our story adventure today. Wasn't that a fun tale? It just goes to show that there's a big story behind every little rhyme. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to our channel for more wonderful stories every day. We can't wait to see you again for our next adventure. Bye-bye for now.